Organizational leadership. The principles of leadership are the same, but organizational leadership, the face of it, has changed since COVID. There's no avoiding that. There's no excusing it. There's no changing it. It has changed, and it has changed irreparably. It has changed forever. The ways in which we lead, if you are a leader of men or a leader of women, a leader of people, if you are a leader in your community, if you have a platform online, there's a million ways you can be a leader, but in almost each instance, some of the ways in which you lead in an organization strategically and tactically have changed because of COVID. And sometimes, for a lot of people, it can be really challenging to navigate those changes. A lot of people are kind of have no idea what to do with themselves as a business leader, or as an organizational leader, as a team leader. Well, lucky for you, we have a good friend named Steve DuVall who's here. He's going to be chatting with us about the new face of organizational leadership, the new face of strategic leadership in a post-COVID world. This guy's super insightful. He's going to bring a lot of value to you today, and we will get to that interview right after this. Man, the music always gets me motivated. Hey, so you'll notice my setting is a little bit different than it normally is. I'm actually traveling right now, so this is where I am. The show must go on, and I brought my mobile rig. Check my giant headphones out. Really excited for today, talking about leadership principles, and organizational leadership in a post-COVID world. Before I introduce Steve and bring him on, just a couple housekeeping items. Friends, we're streaming live right now across 4+ platforms, and I want you to go ahead and throw any comments you might have, any questions, any concerns about anything whatsoever. Please throw it out there in the comment section. We will address them. Steve will answer your questions live and in real time. And if you think we're providing value for you, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, smash the subscribe button, defenestrate the subscribe button, however you want to do it. Just make sure that you subscribe so you can stay in the loop on any information and value that we have to bring to you in the future. But enough about all that. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve DuVall is here. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing really well. So COVID has pretty much flipped a lot of things right upside down. I mean, let's dive right in. What do you see as I'm sure there are many, one of the biggest challenges facing your clients that you work with on a daily basis in the face of this post-pandemic world?
Yeah, thanks again for inviting me today. I'm really glad to be here. It's really exciting. I guess what first comes to mind when you ask me that question is just the engagement and how to sustain the level of engagement, prior to COVID, right? And probably those that are participating have experienced themselves. But as the business owners and leaders that I work with, they're really trying to make sure that they don't lose that engagement. And it starts with them to their leadership team, and then how they're driving that from their leadership team to their employees, because it is so critical that the communication keeps going, that they're clear on their strategies and paths, and they have to keep that momentum, because that break in that communication can obviously be very disruptive.
Right on. So when you say engagement, you're referring specifically then to internal employee to employee or leader to employee engagement, or are you also talking about external engagement, like external communications, marketing, that sort of stuff?
I'm talking more internal. So from the leadership to their leadership team and how they're carrying on business. And again, with the way that each business is set up to manage this, right? So some people are remote, some aren't, and striking that right balance and putting the processes and tools in place so that, again, they don't lose that momentum. And, for some, it's a little bit more of a challenge because, you don't have that touch point as easy as you do in the past, but others are being very successful with it.
Now, when leaders are expressing concern to you about maintaining engagement with their employees, is it really mainly based around ensuring that they're accomplishing tasks? Is this an accountability thing, or is it a morale thing, or anywhere in between?
All the above. You hit it right on the head. It's from the strategic direction. Again, I do a lot of work with groups around strategic planning.
Mm-hmm.
And, you just can't leave that lay there. You have to keep the activities going and the actions going. So it's that process of driving that through the organization. And to your point, driving the accountability through that, just as they were where they're always on site. And then it's the soft side of things. It's to let, so that again, that communication, that interaction, that you're there to hear your employees still exists, and you haven't lost that. And that takes more work now to do that.
So it's a matter of feeling supported then, in addition to making sure that we're checking all the boxes. Do you find that leaders that may be more micromanagey, more inherently micromanagey, struggle with the remote work aspect a little bit more? I would imagine that they would, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I've seen where a couple, and again, different businesses do different approaches, right? Some have, the owner or the leader themselves feels like they need to be there, right? It's their duty, it's their responsibility to be there and try to have as many other people out and away from the environment. So you probably tend to see those that need to just have a harder time letting go. They need to physically be there, just the way they brought themselves up, and they just feel more comfortable doing it that way, and they just feel that they have a little reluctance to let that go.
Right on. We got a comment from Jared. Employee engagement is a massive benefit to employers, yet many companies don't do well in that area, according to research from Gallup. Do you think employee engagement, obviously, I mean, Jared, you hit the nail on the head. Employee engagement is a massive benefit to employers because happy employees and employees that feel supported and encouraged and like their best interests are in mind are obviously going to produce better for the company. What is employee engagement? What are some practices that you are advising leaders to put into place to maintain that level of engagement and make employees feel supported?
Sure. So Jared brings up a great point, and there's many, Gallup is one of them, but there's many other tools out there. So organizations can utilize those assessments and those tools so they can get a feel for what their engagement level is. So there's tools, which is basically you're getting feedback through a software system that helps you understand it. That's kind of a fundamental thing, and it's really good to do because now you set your baseline, you can manage it year over year. But beyond that, it's, again, when you build your culture, you have to make sure that the values of the company are really important to what you want in the business. So it really starts out at company values and, what's critical to the success of the business and how you want to be as an organization. And it always starts with the leader, right? There's just no doubt about it. So where that leader is, so goes the rest of the organization. So the leader and the leadership team, are they living the values? And then it's just, there's very other fundamental things such as the ongoing communication and awareness of where the organization is going and driving that through the organization. And not just once a year, that's a regular cadence. So, again, maybe people on this call have experience with that. It's monthly engagement meetings and sharing the strategy. It's sharing the performance of the business. And it's also driving down what are their roles and responsibilities. So they're clear on the roles and responsibilities. That gets that engagement going. And then the regular feedback, of course. How are they performing? And making sure they're getting that feedback on a regular basis and feeling part of the company.
Right on. So I just going to interject here. Again, we're here with Steve DuVall. If any of you have questions, Steve DuVall is with Permanent Progress LLC. He is an expert consultant. I got his website then going across the bottom there. Strategic leadership consultant. He is the guru of this area. So this is a guy you're going to want to ask questions to. So if you have questions or comments, throw them in the comment section right now. If you have stories on how your company is doing well or doing poorly in their employee engagement since people have gone remote, since the shutdown, since the pandemic. I'd love to hear all about them so we can comment on them and share best practices with one another. Or maybe Steve can help give some insights as to where you may be failing or falling short, or your leadership may be failing or falling short, and give you some insights and some ideas on how you can make some improvements in your business or your workplace. So throw those questions and comments out. We'll make sure that we address them. So from a strategic standpoint, where do you see the future of strategic leadership? Because I mean, obviously there's had to be a lot of tactical level changes to how we engage employees and how we hold them accountable remotely. And people are starting to come back to work, but I don't think we'll ever fully be back to work. I think remote opportunities are here to stay, at least in some semblance, in a hybrid fashion, I would predict.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what advice do you have for the leader or aspiring leader? Do they need to diversify? Do they need to ensure that they're implementing tactics for remote and in-person stuff? Do they need to combine the two? Like how do they possibly navigate this unknown future?
Yeah, where I tend to go to, this is just the way that I work with my clients, is I go to process. And what I mean by that is you really have to be clear on what your key business process is through the organization, and where are the roles and responsibilities that fit within those. And with kind of the current environment, the roles may be defined a little bit differently, but you really have to make sure that those roles are clear and they're ultimately supporting the business objectives. So it's really kind of, again, starting from that top down, what the key processes are, what roles are critical, and then specifically within those roles, that those descriptions and responsibilities are clear. And with COVID now, that there's a different twist to that, because to your point, some roles haven't changed. They're just going to always be the same because of maybe it's physical labor or something like that. It's always going to be changing. But there's other roles that may be a combination of remote and not anymore. And I'm seeing that as well. Well, that takes a little bit of a different clarity and expectations on those individuals. So that's all got to be clear. So again, just re-emphasizing that the organization has to be looked at again and making sure that the roles and responsibilities are clear. And another thing, Adam, I like to kind of think about or bring up is when we go through an event like this, right, we always learn lessons. And many of the businesses, right, many of the businesses looked at where their cost drivers were, right? They had to cut costs. So you're forced to discover things. And that comes up organizationally as well. So are we really mostly efficient? And maybe we learned that we could be more efficient. And again, it gets back to, again, what ultimately do you need in the organization and making sure it's fine-tuned and more efficient than it is a year ago? Because those things surface. Tough times like that, those gaps surface.
Absolutely. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Steve. And I know that from a communications perspective, my background being in communications, there are a lot of businesses, and we chatted about with Kat Ramirez, with Kat and Aaron from Advertise and Focus Digital a few weeks ago. The digital marketing landscape has changed, and so many people have been forced to change due to the pandemic. People that didn't have a digital marketing plan before, that have always said, man, we really should get started with that, all of a sudden didn't have a choice. That was the only outlet that they had. And to your point, there are a lot of avenues and angles where this pandemic forced people to modernize, and then also to cut the fat and cut the excess and really see what was necessary to an organization. I think that's a super, super good point. Jared has a great question. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just want to add one other thing, just when I think about it, and it's getting deep, but I don't know if people know what a DISC is, but it's a behavior assessment. Okay. And the thing that you also need to keep in mind is some people are not suited for work outside the office because their style and behavior type, and I'm bringing it up just maybe for awareness. Don't just assume that everybody can be successful outside the office because they're not at the office and they're going to be more productive. You can't make that assumption. You really need to know the individual styles and their behaviors in what's going to work for them, and can they be successful, or how can you coach them to be successful? So I just want to bring that up too. We kind of lose sight in the people, just saying you go off site and work. It doesn't really work for everybody. Some people are more successful than others, and you got to recognize that.
Well, that's and so I've got a follow-up question there for you before we go into Jarrett's question, which is a good one. Some folks that are applying for jobs that may be a remote only position or an in-person only position may think that they're best suited for remote work, may think that they're best suited for in-person work, but maybe, as is the case with a lot of people, they don't really know themselves as well as they think they do. Would you suggest that leaders have new employees go through a DISC profile or an Myers-Briggs or any sort of personality assessment to see, like, this person should be hybrid, this person should be remote, this person should be in person? Do you think that that's a good part of an onboarding process now moving forward?
Excellent. And in fact, that's what I do with my clients, and I offer those tools and assessments. And then when we define the structure and we look at roles, we define what we want out of that role. So first you understand it, and then you try to align so you know what behaviors you need, what kind of person's going to be successful. Now, as you're interviewing that person, they're doing an assessment. It just gives you that additional insight to make sure they are a good fit for the situation. And then on the flip side, Adam, is the leader itself, the leader, him or herself. They have to be able to manage people remotely. It's, again, we kind of make those assumptions that just all happens by chance. But again, when you're looking at the leadership, they have to have that skill set as well to not, to manage somebody remotely. Maybe they haven't done it in the past. So it's on the flip side as well on a leadership level.
Right on. That's outstanding. Yeah. And there's a ton of ways that people can do assessments. I would suggest not making your own assessment from scratch and trying to extrapolate the data. And DISC is a great, very well established, and a lot of people know it and are familiar with it. Myers-Briggs may be a bit too in-depth and maybe even expensive. And then there's also Clifton Strengths Assessment, which may or may not help get you the information you need. But speaking of Clifton Strengths, Jarrett, who I believe is certified in strengths assessment. I might be wrong on that. Am I wrong on that? I don't know. Jarrett, let me know. But Jarrett wants to know, what are some common challenges that you're seeing with leaders as they try to figure out post-pandemic activity? Do you have any, like, what's an example? And obviously, not asking you to divulge anything private information for your clients, but give us a situation maybe where somebody had a challenge that you were able to help them overcome.
Trying to think of one. I mean, I think I'll go back to, I think, a comment I made earlier was, I've been working with clients, and one, we just started their strategic plan. Okay. And kind of in the middle of all this happening. And I mean, when you put a strategic plan together, you're putting a lot of time and effort in there. And we didn't want to wait to execute that plan. So, I mean, if there's anything, I guess I'm not saying the way that I helped them was I just helped facilitate and make sure that on a weekly basis, I was working with their leadership team to stay engaged and start working that strategic plan and start continuing to move it down through the organization so that we wouldn't lose momentum.
How do you strategic plan? And I know, and again, I go back to communications because that's just where my brain always goes. In coming up with a communications plan, along with our executive director, Saul Newton, for this year, basically we're like, you know what, we're going to plan for the next 6 months and then reevaluate, because we have no idea there's so many variables. And so how do you strategic plan? Do you just stay very mission and vision centric and talk about big picture things? How do you get tactical? How do you find those accountability points? That's got to be a huge challenge for you and for organizations to do right now.
Yeah, and I love doing this, and I could talk about it for hours. So I'll try to give it the cliff notes. So, it's really where do you want to where do you want to be? Where do you want the business to be out 5-10 years from now? Making sure that's a very crystal clear picture, not something very extensive, very crisp and clear, so that the leadership team, the owners understand what that is. Then you start building back from there. Then you start looking out a couple of years and say, what do we need to be 3 years from now? and we're defined there. So that can get us to maybe our 10-year goal. Then you start building that 1-year plan that sets you up for that 3-year plan. So you're right. You kind of hit on it. You're making sure you get your values. If they don't exist, you need to make sure they exist, or you're revisiting your values, your mission, your purpose, right? Your marketing strategy. And you're breaking that down even further into, okay, I got my objectives with some metrics. And now what are my priorities? We can all start working on everything at once. And this is where the discipline comes in. Let's break down what are our priorities by quarter, so that each quarter we stay focused on those priorities. We don't get distracted and look 8-10 months out. We're focusing on the current priorities for this quarter, because we know we set ourselves up that if we do those, the rest of the year is going to start following suit. So there's a lot of legwork in there. You're self-assessing yourself in great depth. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What are our opportunities? What are our threats? And making sure you're uncovering everything. There's one thing I talk about with clients in strategic planning. It's about transparency. And I say this over and over again. And that's because you have to be totally honest with yourself about where you are in your organization. If you don't bring up everything, evaluate everything as you're putting your plan together, you're not going to gain as much. You're not going to be as successful, because maybe you are afraid to bring something up to confront it, or you don't want to hit that challenge right now. And so it's really about being honest with yourself as a company and as a leader, and to make sure that you're disclosing everything and removing those barriers and addressing the things so that you can hit your long-term goals.
Man, you nailed it, Steve. Objective self-reflection as a person or as an organization is a superpower. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
So as we're rounding third here, I want to encourage everybody to please, if you have questions for Steve, throw them out there. Jared, I really appreciated your questions there and your comment. You're right about that. I am a certified StrengthsFinder coach. I knew it. I knew it. Good stuff. Yeah, those personality assessments. I got a funny story about that. When I was a military training instructor, everybody in the MTI Corps had to take Myers-Briggs on the front end. And I confess, I did not take it very seriously. I was annoyed anytime Myers-Briggs came up. And one of my bosses, one of my leaders was like, well, what's your thing? And I didn't even remember. I had to go look it up. And I told him what my 4-letter code was. And he said, so what's your problem with Myers-Briggs? And I said, I don't think it's possible to be able to put somebody in a box and typecast them and blah, blah, blah. And he starts thumbing through this book and he looks up my thing and he goes, would likely have a problem with personality assessments to begin with, does not like being put into a box, and like basically called me out. Like my personality type had a problem with personality assessments. I was like, shoot, you got me. So now I need to take it seriously.
And with all of my clients, that's the first step, is doing the assessment, whether it's just
the DISC owner, assessment, the leader, correct?
The owner, the leader, and there's a little bit more I do. I do emotional quotient.
Sure.
We look at other driving behaviors, we do that first, because they need to understand themselves. To truly be successful, you truly need to understand yourself. And we start there, and then we expand it to the leadership team. So now you're discovering your team and the behaviors, and it becomes an awareness for everybody. It's extremely healthy to have those conversations, and for your peer or your boss to really understand who you are at the next level, so that when you talk about communication engagement, the more we understand each other, the more successful we are doing that. And then you're capitalizing on those people's strengths, or you're helping them with their opportunities. So yeah, very powerful tools. It's really great stuff.
So those assessments are not just for your employees; they're for and a way in which you can better learn to engage and support and encourage your employee base. It's also about looking in the mirror. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I've taken the DISC assessment before when I was an exec for the Boy Scouts of America, and that was one of the first things that they had us do. Boy Scouts, they know how to train their nonprofit administrators and executives. You can tell a lot about an organization, about especially a nonprofit organization, and how much they invest in the training of their folks. Really cool. Anyways, that was complete aside. Tell me about permanent progress.
Sure.
Where did that name come from? And is the consulting and strategic leadership coaching and facilitating world, Has that been much like other things in the face of COVID, like kind of hit or miss? Who knows? Or has there just been an explosion like of people saying, help, I don't know what to do right now.
Yeah.
Help us move through this. Or has it pretty much stayed the same?
Yeah. I'll answer that question first. It's pretty much stayed the same. I mean, even
Okay.
through last year, companies were open to working together. And yeah, did COVID help drive some of that activity? Sure. Because again, it's back to that, there's some things that we start discovering about our business through that, through that, I'll call it the event and what we all went through, especially in March last year when people were shutting down everything else like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so people, I guess, I don't want to say woke up, but just, kind of started realizing some things that, yeah, maybe they should get things under control. But just a little bit more about my business. So yeah, so I'm an executive coach. So I typically work with a business owner or a leader. And just as I said, I start out with kind of understanding who they are and working on their leadership development first. Because, and again, I mentioned this earlier, as goes the leader, goes the rest of the organization. So we want to make sure that we're fully utilizing their strengths, and where there's barriers to their leadership and it may be impacting their business, we're working on those, developing action plans out of the assessments and other work that we're doing. So it usually starts there and spending some time, really deep time with the owners and leaders. And then, like I said, on to other people in the organization as well, where they really want to help grow some people. And then we'll start working on, okay, how is the business running and what do you need to look at in the business? And, do we need to look at the strategic plan? Are there enough KPIs or the right KPIs, the key performance indicators, scorecards and such to the business so that everybody knows how the business is performing? And then, then we need to look at maybe organization. So we'll assess the organization and accountability. We'll build accountability charts and go through the organization. And it just kind of goes from there. It really depends on the client's needs. I like to follow their lead and be of support where I can.
You bet. Well, right on. Well, man, this was insanely valuable. Everybody, you can see Permanent Progress LLC is scrolling across the bottom there. Check them out. Check Steve out. He's a guy that really knows his stuff, that's for sure. And I think the overarching theme here is you got to get to know yourself, and you have to have a central established vision. And then sometimes you just need help from a guy like Steve to help make it happen. This good stuff. So, Steve, I'll ask you to hang on the line here. Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I think again, you did a great job of summarizing. It's that who you are, making sure you totally understand yourself, and if you're the leader or part of the leadership team, do you have a great plan, a solid plan that's you're leading through the organization, and does everybody in your organization know it, and are they following it? Right? That's the litmus test.
Right on. There it is. Well, hang on the line here a minute, Steve, as I close things out. Friends, wow, that was super cool. If we provided some value for you today, make sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn, and click that subscribe button on YouTube, or follow us on Twitch, any or all of the above. We are here every Wednesday at 11:30 Central to provide value for you. Again, this office hour is brought to you by the Wisconsin Veterans Chamber of Commerce. My name is Adam Bratz. We will see you same time, same place next week. And I got to find the video. Come on, man. Ooh, Bush League. Come on. Okay, too much gap there. Look at that. I got to get my act together. Here's the video now. Peace out.